Hello guys, so we have started we are continuing our fourth episode in our cloud service from scratch series, and today we are going to be exploring on the ERD diagram that is required for our database for this service. So this is going to be our part one for the ERD diagram because this is going to be a very much of a like complicated architecture that we're going to use. Like it's not complicated, but there are so many components that we have to explain. So that is why we have to break this topic down into multiple part series so we can actually go through it. So let's jump on to the topic and don't waste any more time. So currently, just to dive into the whole thing and just to recap on the architecture, we have the following architecture here. We have the shared volume token API, system-based APIs, and the middleware API, right? So we are focusing on the middleware API because this is where all of the data is going to be stored, and this is where we are going to build our whole ERD diagram into database models, right? So let's start with the whole thing. And so currently, by default, any system, any software service has a by default entity that is users. And in this users entity, we are going to have two uh, like uh, columns to store IDs. One is going to be an auto-incremented integer that is actually the by default thing that you actually see here the diagrams. And the other thing that we need is an ID, a Juju ID, because, for example, if we want to like get the session of a user, we don't want it to be based off user ID. We want to be based off like user Juju ID. So it will actually make our system more secure. This is going to be used internally for internal sorting and all of the stuff. This is going to be used for public usage. If we want to like search by public, we can actually use the Juju ID, and then we have the permissions. We will actually go into it a little bit deeper later on. We have the permission ID that is a foreign key that should be not null. We have the regular name, email, password, blacklisted if we want to blacklist a user. Then we have the profile URL, right? We want to upload the profile picture of a user, then we want the URL to be there, right? And then we have the authentication as well. If you want to store the authentication credentials, if you don't want, that is why I'm going to set this. That is why I set this password as null, right? Because we have two options here. We have options for regular authentication and we have options for authentication as well. And I have this last um, row, like column right here, that is notes, where we can actually store notes regarding a user. If something goes wrong and we want to store some notes, we can actually definitely do that as well. So it provides a lot of flexibility in doing so. And then let's dive into the user permissions now. In the user permissions, as we said earlier, this is going to be attached to the user's table as a foreign key. Uh, we need user permissions so we can actually differentiate different types of users. Like we have the enum here, that is actually the user type, right? And we also have the different permissions a user can have, right? A create server, edit server, view server, delete server, get server, links, get server, logs. All of these things can be permissionalized by using the permissions table here, right? So we can actually limitize or put some restrictions on our APIs based on the different users we have. And talking about the user type enum right now, then in the user type enum, we have the admin manager regular user for this time. So this is our user entity and all its related entities regarding the user. And let's now just dive into the physical system entity. So let's talk about what is a physical system entity. So physical system entity is going to be regarding this physical system. These APIs. This is the system that we have, the computer system. This is the system that we are talking about. And why do we need this entity? Because we want to have both the URL, like the system URL and also the Docker API URL as well, right? We want to have those information. We want the GPU IDs, like which type of GPUs are there, like the number of types of the GPU and the number of GPUs as well, right? We need those information as well. We need, let me just remove these extra information. This is not needed. Sorry for the extra information. We can just simply remove it. And we in this system, we also need the UUID again because I think so. It can actually provide a very beneficial role in this in the system as well. We can actually differentiate our system by UUIDs. Then we have the private IP. Then we have the public IP, the private IP system, public IP system, MAC address. MAC address is going to be very essential in the future when we talk about in a more deeper level. Then we have the Docker API URL that we were talking about earlier. There are two different APIs, the system API and the Docker API, right? So we actually are storing both of these API URL here. And then we have the stats. The stats of the system can also be stored in the JSON file, right? And then we have the is tunnel limit read as well. Like if the system has all of its GPUs occupied, we can actually set it to true or false. So we can actually eliminate these systems from our search engine or from our like APIs as well. We can actually just filter out these systems that are fully occupied. And if you want, if something goes wrong with the system, we can just turn it as offline true or false. So it can actually allow us to filter those systems that have some defect going on or not working properly, right? And then if we go into a little bit deeper, so we have this GPU IDs, right? It's associated with it's like it has a foreign key, which is linked with associated GPU IDs. This is where we have a many-to-many relationship and we can actually like allow a system to have multiple types of GPU. For example, a system can have 3090, 4090, or like 2090 attached to it simultaneously. We don't have any limitations regarding that, so that is why we have another table where we can actually just align those IDs together. And then we have this final like many to one relationship that is in type. So we can actually filter out which GPU ID is linked to which GPU. Actually, like the 3090, 4090, what is the price of it? What are the features, right? We can have this type of thing is going on as well. And now regarding our like final entity for today that we're going to discuss is the shared volumes. In the shared volume, as we discussed earlier in our, let's go back to our architecture here. We are discussing about the shared volume as well, right? Because we have to give an option for the users to use a shared volume instead of the local system volume. So for that, we have the shared volume like entity here as well. And in here, we are actually going to discuss about like the same thing, the private key ID, that is the ID. And then we have its user ID attached as well. Like we want to link the volume to the user that has created the volume as well. The name of the volume, it can be nullable as well. You can actually name it. By default, it will be based on UID, and we have the volume, how much space that you have allocated, and also the unit enum value, right? The enum value, like for example, it would be in GBs, megabytes, terabytes, whatever like space that you want to. And the region type as well. In which region that shared volume is going to be placed. That is also one of the like key configuration that we can do at the moment. So this is the shared volume uh, entity, and these are the like the earlier entities that we have discussed. And in the next video, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into the tunneling system, like the tunneling entity diagram, where our models APIs would be stored, and also the models entity as well, where our world templates would be stored, and also our volume, like the images would also be stored. Like the images will have its own separate entity. I'm talking about the Docker images right now because we want to store those Docker images in our shared volume so we can access it a lot faster. So there are so many entities that need to be discussed in the next video. So stay tuned, guys. So if you like the video, do subscribe to my channel. Do like and subscribe. And also, if you have any suggestions, do mention your suggestions in the comment section below as well. I'm trying to improve this setup as much as possible. So just need a couple of suggestions from your side. So take care, guys. Have a great day. Goodbye.